As we know, starting tomorrow, the initial steps of easing the latest of Governor Walz's statewide restrictions will begin. The governor today saying the removal of limits for outdoor dining and other outdoor events will be the first step. Also, the mandatory closing time for bars and other hospitality businesses will end. At the end of the month, capacity limits and distancing will no longer be required, but face masks will. Blois Olson with Fluence Media and our political analyst, also the man who knows it all. You called this last week, helped me break the news. What was it, last Thursday when we were talking about this? Was there any piece to the governor's announcement today that surprised you?
The speed at which the mask mandate can go away surprised me a little. You know, I started to I knew that there were going to be 3 phases late yesterday, and then I kept measuring it against the state fair. But what I didn't think about was the calculation of July 1st when they have to have a state budget done. And so obviously if he gets rid of the mask mandate before or on July 1st, that takes something off the table that Republicans can try to negotiate on.
Okay, let's talk about those negotiations because the Senate Majority Leader Paul Gazelka today said this is not good enough. And even some Democrats are ready for the peacetime emergency to be over, the governor's executive authority to be done. He's keeping his executive authority. So how much is this going to be a sticking point with negotiations?
Well, look, I think the executive authority on things related to the pandemic, from vaccines to testing to hospitals to the National Guard, are all natural things that I think Republicans would agree that he would keep. I think there's some legislative negotiation and with the governor on things like the eviction moratorium and other things that are going to be linchpins on the final deal with the legislature. So I think that, you know, Republicans naturally said this is too slow, but I think it's faster than a lot of people thought would happen. So just before Memorial Day, we essentially opened the whole state with the exception of the mask mandate. And if we get to 70% of 16 plus Minnesotans having their first shot, Betsy, we can get rid of the mask mandate sooner. So there's a little bit of a carrot, there's a little bit of a stick, but I think the governor was trying to show that he understands both from a socio-psychology standpoint and a political standpoint that the state needs to begin to reopen.
And there are other Democrats who are saying today's announcement was too much and too many restrictions being lifted at one time. They would have liked to have seen this be a little less progressive.
So I think that just tells you that the governor's trying to strike a chord in the middle. I think he knows that he's got to try to find the middle. And there's a lot of people in the middle, but there's just not a lot of middle in the legislature on either the right or the left.
Yeah, and we are a state with a divided legislature. With that being said, what are the odds we're going to see a shutdown?
You know, I don't know where we're at on the shutdown talk, but I do think there's going to be a lot of brinksmanship here between now and the middle of June. I don't think they're going to get done by May 17th. I think that they are, I know, exchanging offers in private. The governor said today he's going to have legislative leaders over for a barbecue and start to try to see if they can't start some social gatherings that might help break some of the logjam. But there's a couple things. One is as long as Democrats have a tax increase on the table, it's not going to go anywhere, and it's not kind of a serious negotiation. And then secondly, when Republicans threaten to defund or not fund state parks, they look like they're out of touch with Minnesota. So they're both kind of marking their territory right now. And then I would say that by this weekend or maybe early next week, they start inching closer together. But I think we're still a long ways away from a budget deal.
And a lot has been happening when it comes to legalizing recreational pot in Minnesota. There was another committee hearing this week about it. It seems like this was getting a lot farther in this session. Is that going to be a sticking point? Is that going to go away? Is that going to move forward?
I do not think that that's a deal breaker or a deal maker. I think the House will have a strong position. I think they're going to show their strong position as much as they can with bipartisan votes in the House to the Senate and try to get something done. But I think marijuana legalization for recreational use is not possible. The one exception, not to recreational use, but would be that leaf marijuana or leaf cannabis becomes a part of the state's medicinal marijuana program. I could see that being the compromise at the end of the day.
I love your insight because you are the man who does know these things, and you do get nuggets from here and there that I don't get. So I appreciate that you share them with me. I need to take a quick break, Blois, and when we come back on the other side, I do want to talk about the lawsuit that was filed by the churches and the settlement that was announced today. So can you hang with me 2 minutes?
Of course.
Thank you. We'll be right back. Again, I am speaking with my friend, our political analyst, Blois Olson with Fluence Media. And before the break, I said I wanted to touch on this, Blois. It's the first time since this pandemic began that Governor Walz kind of lost a court battle as groups were suing the governor over the limits with his executive authority. The announcement comes today on the National Day of Prayer, a little ironic right there. And it's not necessarily a win for the churches, although that's what we're hearing from more on the conservative side. Your take?
Look, the governor and the attorney general settled the case where churches had sued for no rules in church related, claiming freedom of religion. I think it's one of the big questions of all these executive orders. I think it will play out again and again. The interesting thing is that they settled. They probably settled knowing that restrictions would be eased and before they got to discovery. But I do think this is one of those kind of threads that we will hear about through 2022 is about where the governor went too far. And, you know, when you start to impede on people's right to religious practice, people get fired up pretty quick. And they certainly are going to be and were about this issue.
Why do you think this one settled and the other ones, the other groups, flat out lost? We've had judges throw out cases from everything from what's education groups, restaurant, hospitality groups.
I think it settled just because they probably had one of the stronger cases. One of the legal mistakes other groups made was that they kind of sued too prematurely, or they sued under the wrong parts of the law. And I'm not a lawyer, but these things are important. One other lawsuit to watch is the one over sports regulations for youth sports. There's been some early discovery in that case, and I don't know that you're going to go back and settle anything, but I think that there's emails, there's data practices requests that are going to keep coming for months on many of these issues, and maybe the Walz and Ellison team did not want that to happen on churches.
How is the governor's executive authority going to play into his bid for re-election? Now, he has not announced officially that he is running for another term, but we all know that he has held some fundraising events, so it indicates that he would run.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's any doubt he's running at this point. I think that that's going to be one of the things that, you know, his opponents bring up a lot next year. The question is, how well is the economy doing next year? Have people kind of moved on from the pandemic? And frankly, do Republicans in particular put up a compelling candidate that not only can critique Walz on the pandemic and other issues, but also offer a compelling vision? And, you know, I know a year from now that race will be hot and heavy, and we'll cover it closely, but we're a long ways away from that. But there's no doubt that there's politics as all of this. I mean, it's natural.
Yeah, and speaking of the governor's race, do you know of any other Republicans who are throwing their hat into the ring? Because I know of one that was announced this week.
Yeah, I think his name's Mike Marty.
Yes, he's from Kasson. Right? He's from Kasson. Yeah, I heard that this week, and I thought, well, that's interesting. How likely? We don't know who all is going to throw their hat into the ring on the Republican side to run against Governor Walz, but will Jensen has a pretty good name for himself, the former Senator Dr. Scott Jensen, who announced, 2 months ago that he's running. It's going to be hard to get Republican support for other ones who are running.
Well, we know that Senate Majority Leader Paul Gazelka is thinking strongly about running, and this week it came out that Senator Michelle Benson is strongly considering a run as well. So I would suspect there's 4 to 8 candidates on the Republican side. They'll vie for the endorsement. We'll see if there's a primary. But all of them, no doubt, will make the governor's powers during the pandemic one of their cornerstone issues that they'll try to critique him on.
Well, if you hear something before I do, which is highly, highly likely, you come knocking on the door, okay?
Sounds good, Betsy.
All right, Blois, we'll talk again very soon, next week.
Sounds good.
All right.